If you ran your business like you ran your home, how would it go? And if you ran your home like you ran your business, how would it go? And immediately when we start thinking about things through the lens of outcomes, all of a sudden it changes activities. If you go to an Apple store, from the point that you hit the website to the point that you fill out a satisfaction survey at the very end, the experience never changes. If you go to IKEA, the experience never changes. It's one experience all the way through.
Yeah.
I think that is the biggest missed opportunity in the real estate space specifically. The thing you have to understand about an entrepreneur is that there is always this fear that if the ball stops, I'm not going to be able to get it rolling again.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for today's episode of Real Estate Disruptors. So we have Brandon McCurdy with Sharper Business. And Brandon has worked with over 600 businesses, and today we're going to be talking about the 3 things that can train wreck your business. Now, guys, I'm on a mission to create 100 millionaires. The information on the show alone is enough to help you become a millionaire in the next 5 to 7 years. You will take consistent action. You will become one. And guys, if you get value today, please hit that subscribe button. That way, we can create more millionaires. Ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, first things first, let's talk about what your life was like right before you got into business.
Before I got into business, so I was in college. I was managing a truck stop. So I was working 50 hours a week managing a truck stop. I would work from 9 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning, and then I had an 8 o'clock class. So then I finished college, and I went and got a position. I was actually working at a church, and that doesn't pay much. So.
No?
Had to figure something out. So started a branding and marketing agency, started doing graphic design work, and they would send me over their marketing plans that they had paid some agency to do and to design the work on it. And I'd get into it and be like, this is horrible. And I said, can I just do the marketing plan for free? And so I did that a couple of times and it went well. And so agency kind of grew from there and just kept running it. My wife is a crazy entrepreneur, so we've started 4 or 5 businesses and done different things there. So, yeah, life before was college. So,
how was that conversation about like, hey, this marketing plan sucks, let me do this for free? How did that go?
Yeah, most of the time they weren't too confident in it either. By the time you brought it to them, I mean, there was just common sense stuff that you'd get into a lot of those, and on its face, theoretically, it sounded okay, but then you'd get and realize this is not practical. Or they would have these just inflated budgets that didn't make any sense. And so I would do it for a much better price.
Yeah, because I'm working with someone right now, and like they had me meet their marketing person. Yeah. And like we're talking logos and colors and this and that. And I was like, this is just the wrong place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I teach adjunct at Illinois State University. So I go there every semester and teach and you sit in the marketing classes with these kids who are taking marketing, and there's not a lot of practicality being taught in marketing today. So,
well, it's great if you have Coca-Cola's budget.
Sure. Yeah, right? Absolutely. Yeah, all day.
Nike's budget, Coca-Cola, who is always on the Super Bowl, right? Like Corona, Coors Light.
100%.
Right.
Does not work in a direct response environment, though. If you actually need sales today, that's not a good plan.
No. And that's what I learned later on. So you started your agency.
Yeah.
Why did you start an agency?
It was the best vehicle for the type of work I wanted to do. I wanted to bring on clients that I could help them end to end. And so a lot of times you get your specialty. And so you have people who have a design studio, and then somebody else will have a social media management company, and then somebody else will have an ad buying system and so forth. And then somebody else will have your actual physical products. Right. And I liked doing all of it. So
Gotcha.
I had 4 or 5 big, deeper clients that I would just go all the way down, and I almost acted more like a fractional CMO for them versus having 50 clients that I'm doing, one project here or there for. So it was more retainer work.
Was this around the same time you got involved with StoryBrand?
Yeah, so I had been doing a lot of the messaging and things just kind of organically. It kind of came natural to me just because of, the way my mind works.
Yeah.
And story branding was just a way to kind of message it a little bit better, frame it up a little bit better, and it's a great system. And so it worked really well with what I was doing already, and definitely added a nice wrinkle to what we were doing.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about marketing, guys, for a bit. Yeah. Before we continue, just want, if you guys are asking like why Brandon's here, Brandon ran our quarterly, right? Like, so, when I asked Brandon to come on, like, they're part of Sharper Business. Sharper Business works with us directly. I can't think of a better testimonial than like, we work with Gary, Susan, Brandon, Amanda, Austin, like the entire organization, right? Brandon, although you've worked with hundreds and hundreds of companies, your additional talents include marketing and branding.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why we're talking about this, but we're going to talk about business. So
Yes.
you guys can bear with me with my own, inquiry, curiosity about business, about marketing, and then we'll get to the business.
Let's do it.
Right. So, all right. So, StoryBrand. So quick, little fun fact is, I was creating a website, right? It was about, hey, realtors, aren't you tired of all the wholesalers like stealing all your business? Like that was the message, right? Like that's the headline.
Right.
Right. And then we had this whole real estate, this whole website built out for this. So I was going to start, teaching, realtors how to find motivated sellers. Cause like, why don't you know this skill?
Right.
And so I put it together. I'm really proud of the work I put together, right? Cause I went through StoryBrand. Like I started the morning going through StoryBrand, then I put the website together and made it all look all pretty. And I showed it to my wife and I was like, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I was like, if I were to go hire an outside consultant to do the StoryBrand and the website design, that's more than $5,000.
Sure.
Right. My oldest hears this and she's like, $5,000 to make a website?
Yeah.
Like, probably. Yeah. She's like, how do I do that? It's like, well, for step one, you got to read StoryBrand.
Nice.
And so she got halfway through. She didn't finish it. But I wanted to spend a little time talking about StoryBrand. Why StoryBrand?
Yeah. So we look at everything through the lens of whoever says it the simplest wins. I said this to your team yesterday.
Yeah.
The clearer you can define a problem, the clearer you can solve a problem, you win every time. It's the reason why the family restaurant with the 85-page menu is going out and Chipotle is coming in, right? Chick-fil-A is coming in. By us, Raising Cane's, right? They just sell one product. It clarifies the messaging.
Yeah, versus Cheesecake Factory.
Versus like, here's this, like book of items for you to choose from, right? But in every scenario, that's not always necessarily possible. Sometimes you have to get more information across. Sometimes you have to be able to evoke a lot more emotions. And the only way to do that is by storytelling. And so if you think about every great movie you've ever watched, if I said, hey, Steve, give me 75 points from our meeting yesterday, no notes, you'd be like, I'm out, right?
Yeah.
But if I said, tell me the plot line to your favorite movie, give me 75 points from Star Wars. If you knew Star Wars, you could probably do it pretty quick.
Yeah.
My daughter is 13. She's deep into Star Wars, right? She could tell you every character's name, every person, everything. Now, you ask her to tell you what she did on her math homework yesterday, that's probably not going to happen, right? Because stories make sense. They're like a bag, a sense-making device that we can put stuff in, we can carry concepts. So when we StoryBrand something, we're basically creating a story because it's a native mechanism that people know how to use. From the time you were a child, somebody told you a story, and they all have the exact same outline. First time you do a brand script with somebody, it literally ruins every movie they'll ever see.
Oh, yeah.
Because then you're sitting there the whole time going, oh, stink. Like, there's the character, there's the guide, there's the, external, internal, and philosophical problems. This is the call to action now, and now we're hitting it, and now it's either going to be a success or a failure, and it's that point of tension, and then it's a success, and they reach their aspirational identity as a person. So it just makes sense.
The hero's journey, right?
It's the hero's journey. It's how we get to points, and it's helping a business reposition themselves as the guide, not the hero.
Yeah, if you understand hero's journey, it does ruin a lot of movies.
It does.
Because what was the takeaway? I also read the Heroes 2 Journeys, I believe. Jimmy really suggested it, and in it they talk about in romance, the all hope is lost is like when the guy loses the girl.
Right.
Something's uncovered and all hope is lost. And then in every Marvel movie, right? Like all the heroes are sullen.
Yes.
Like they just lost to some big bad guy. All hope is lost.
Right.
And then a eureka moment, and then everything's fine.
Yeah, and you can always find those guides in there. Sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a character, sometimes it's a philosophy, but there's always the guide, and the guide's always the stronger one. Yoda's already been there. Yep. Luke Skywalker is about to fail, and he's going to help him get there. And it's just a perfect way of mapping out for a business like how we should be positioning ourselves. I mean, in 2024, it doesn't really make sense for a company to tell you how great they are.
Right.
I've been saying this a lot lately as we talk about benefits, not features.
Right.
And that's all that is identifying as I'm a guide to get you to where you want to go, and it's got a very, very apathetic to the person.
And something that we push really hard in our sales training is using stories to overcome objections.
There you go.
Right? Like, hey, you don't want to go with a realtor. Realtor's going to overpromise the price. You're going to listen, sit in the market. A bunch of people walking through your home. Like like whatever.
Yeah.
But hey, Brandon, I was actually talking to Austin, and he went with the realtor because the realtor said the house was worth 400,000. And I just reached out to him, see how it's going, and well, it's now 375.
Yeah.
Right. And it's been 4 months.
Right.
And he's frustrated as all can be. I'm not saying this is gonna happen to you, but like if you were to have that situation, like how would that affect you? And like you hear the stories, like I don't want to be Austin.
Right.
Don't let me be Austin. So it changes the dynamic there.
So good.
Now you just mentioned though, your message has been like, we're not number one, right? Like the classic realtor marketing, we're number one.
Right.
Right. So one of the challenges I have in working with salespeople is they want to talk about how awesome they are. Brandon, like, look, we got these 5-star reviews.
Right.
We had the biggest budget. We bought this many houses and all these things, right? And like, no one cares about any of that.
Right.
How are you getting that message across to people?
Yeah. The moment you stop talking about their problem is the moment they stop listening.
Yeah.
And that's literally as you're having a conversation with somebody, if you ever find yourself not talking about their problem, then you're wasting your breath. I mean, we sat yesterday for 8 hours and we went through a whole consult together.
Yeah.
If at any point in that consult I would have started talking about all my problems and all my issues and all the problems I'm having, and not all the problems that Steve is having and all the things that we're solving within the business here and all those different things, at any point in there, you would have completely disconnected from it.
Right.
Because I'm not talking about your problems anymore. Right. And you can watch it happen in a room. We're in a couple different masterminds that are the same. We'll go to those events and we'll show up there and you'll watch somebody get up and present and you'll watch half the room take their phone out and half the room is like, this is the greatest thing ever happening. What's happening? People are self-identifying as this is not my problem.
Yeah.
And the other half of the room is saying, this is the greatest thing ever. Like this is my problem. This is exactly what I'm having a problem with. I mean, I was at an event recently and a guy spoke and I was sitting next to a guy. We both heard the exact same presentation. I was kind of like, it was fine. The guy next to me was like, that changed my life.
Right.
Same thing, right?
It's funny you mentioned that because at the last CG, the guy that spoke was the author of Gapology.
Yes.
And the guy's just going through it. And I already read the book
Mm-hmm.
and we've just started applying it.
Right.
But it's different when you read the book or listen to the book and you apply it. And then the guy speaks and you hear a slightly different take.
Sure.
And I'm like writing notes down. I'm loving it. This applies to me. This is going to help me be a better trainer.
Yes.
Right. Now, I did notice his delivery was not the best.
Sure.
But it was like, this applies to me.
Yes.
Everyone else I talked to was like, that was a terrible presentation.
That's so funny because I was texting with a mutual friend of ours during the presentation and he was saying the same thing to me, was like, boy, this is a struggle. He's struggling with the delivery here.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it's really good content. But he was having a rough go of it. But again, if it was your thing and it's your problem, the delivery would have almost been irrelevant.
Yeah. Well, I was going through it. I was enjoying it despite the delivery. Right.
Pulling out the nuggets.
Pulling the nuggets. Because again, like for me, this applies directly with the reason why how my training can be more effective. I'm looking at this like I'm going to take this information and make my training more effective. So like this is all gold.
Sure.
But yeah, if this isn't your intent,
then it's not going to be interesting to you at all.
Right. Yeah. So that's a great point. So be the guide, don't be the hero.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how many times I've said this in talking to a salesperson, like you're not the hero.
Right.
You're the guide.
It's understanding this, and this usually helps the salesperson out a little bit. Is the guide is always the strong one.
Mm-hmm.
I always whenever I brand script, I always ask when we get to the trying to figure out successes, I always look at them and say, how many times have you bought a house? And usually it's 400, 500, 600 times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, great. Your average seller, how many times have they bought or sold a property? And the answer is always the same, which is I think they're probably only going to have done 1 or 2 real estate transactions in their life. And I said, great. So they have no idea what success looks like.
Mm-hmm.
They have no idea what failure looks like. They have no idea what it's like to get a letter from a bank. They have no idea what happens next. And so in that scenario, you are the stronger party.
Mm-hmm.
You have the knowledge, you have the skills, you have the experience, you have all the things working for you, and they don't. And so for you to compete to be the hero with them, you just turned your customer into your competitor.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a worse position to be in?
No, it's not.
Exactly. And so that's my point is like by saying you're the guide, it's identifying as the stronger party that can take somebody where they want to go, not compete with them for positioning.
Yeah.
Which is tough, again, because the things we love about salespeople are the things we hate about salespeople. The charisma and the dominance, in PI and those things that are those high level skills also can become a bit of a hindrance when it's time to say, I've got to be selfless and I've got to put you in the right position. So
yeah, it's tough. Like when I talk about managing salespeople, like that is like the most challenging. I think of everything I do, that's probably the most challenging thing I do.
What makes them great makes them terrible. That's what I always say to clients every time we talk about salespeople is what makes them great makes them terrible.
Yeah.
So,
but that's the reason why Ryan and I launched the sales leadership training together. Yep. The other thing we were talking about yesterday, after our quarterly, we had a conversation. I made the comment that I think Ryan Pineda is the best marketer I know, and you gave me a clarification.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Sure. So I take marketing, as we would traditionally call it, say it's just marketing as a whole, and we just take this big giant bucket and we throw everything in it. Mm-hmm. I break it down to 4 different parts, which is branding, marketing, advertising, and sales. Mm-hmm. So branding is who you are. Brand is the promise. The promise I make to you is this is the brand. This is what you're going to get from it. Marketing then becomes what I say. That's where we get into why story branding or messaging or considering how you're using your words is important. Advertising then is where I say it. So that's all the ad buying, the channels, the organic, all the stuff I'm doing. And then the sale, your wheelhouse, is when now we're going to ask. Now we're going to ask for something, and this is the point of decision where you're going to decide whether my branding, my marketing, my advertising are worthy of me being able to ask you the question if you want to buy something from me.
Yeah.
So back to Ryan. I mean, it's a nuance, but I think Ryan is one of the best branders in the space. Yeah. When you sit with Ryan, the way that he clearly delivers his promise, there's no misunderstandings about as to where he stands on things. There's no misunderstandings as to how he's trying to portray the brand. We worked with him, about a year and a half, 2 years ago to help kind of clarify this a little bit and bring it to a place. And he just executes at such a quick, breakneck, and high level pace.
Yeah, he does.
That he's able to take that promise and scale it at a speed that you'd have a hard time finding a comp.
The people in our space, right? Yeah. It's really cool to start on the beginning where I was with Ryan before this social media journey. Yeah. And I was with Pace before his crazy journey. So you look at the best branders then using this filter. I think Ryan and Pace are the 2 best branders.
Yeah.
What is, in your perspective, Ryan's brand promise?
I think the brand promise with Ryan is that it's on the front end. He went with this wealthy, which evokes conversation on the front end. So wealthy way, wealthy business. We work with Ryan with that. There's wealthy creator. There's the wealth con. All of these different things. It's evoking this question on the front end as to what is actual wealth. And so when you evoke a question, then he has to fulfill the promise to answer that question. And so the brand promise is that wealth isn't necessarily financial. It comes with all of these other components behind it as well. Yeah. So that promise that you can be wealthy even if the bank account isn't where you'd like it to be. Or you can be wealthy without having all of the peripheral things that maybe the world is telling you need. It really is a clear promise to a very specific and clarified audience that resonates. You think about it, millennials on down will trade a high amount of their lifetime earnings in exchange for purpose.
Right.
So that's why with Sharper, we talk to people all the time about core values and purpose and mission and vision. And a lot of times folks who are 41, 42 and above kind of start rolling their eyes when we're talking about purpose statements, and everybody who's 35 and below is like, this was the greatest day we've ever had in our business. Yeah. I think that's what Ryan does a good job at, is that bottom side of the audience where it's the 35 on down, and he can come and say, here's the purpose. I'm going to clarify a purpose for you, which is around wealth and a life of wealth. And I just think he does such a good job with that, of clarifying what he's doing there. Pace would be in that same boat. I have not worked with Pace. I've spoken at events with him a couple of times, but does such a good job just clarifying up on the front end. This is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to be. This is the promise. Uses consistent messaging and verbiage. I just read a book the other day. They were explaining this process, which is all great businesses or communities or groups function a lot like cults,
Mhm.
right? And every cult has three things. They have a book, they have scheduled meetings, and they have principles or doctrines by which they live.
Yeah.
And I think that's what both of those gentlemen have done a really good job of. They have a book,
Mhm.
they have scheduled times where they meet,
Mhm.
and then they have doctrines which they believe in.
Yeah.
And that's where those foundational pieces go.
And those doctrines, like right now in 2024, I guess we're kind of on the other side of cancel culture.
Mm-hmm.
But having a strong opinion,
Yeah.
you always subjected yourself to the possibility of getting canceled.
Right.
But what we've also seen is like there's a guy in San Diego who does really, really well, and he's like super right wing,
Mm-hmm.
right, in San Diego.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's just screaming from the mountaintops about First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, which, like, good for him. I'm not screaming it, like,
Right.
support it,
Right.
not screaming it,
More power to you.
right? But what he's found is that he's got a really strong clientele
Mm-hmm.
because, you're offending
Right.
probably more than half of your audience in California,
Correct.
but the ones that you're not offending, like, they'll ride with you.
Yes.
So that's the doctrines you're talking about.
Right. The worst emotion to have in branding is apathy.
Yeah.
Right. You either need to love me or you need to hate me. If you're apathetic towards me,
Yeah.
it doesn't exist. I mean, I'm a Chicago Bulls fan, right? I grew up in
Right.
Chicago in the 90s.
Mhm.
The Bulls right now are, we're in basketball purgatory, right? I mean, we're not good enough to win anything. We're not bad enough to get a draft pick.
Yeah.
And so right now, I don't even own any Chicago Bulls merch. I'm completely apathetic to it.
Yeah.
Now, in the 90s,
Yeah.
I mean, you either loved them or hated them, and that was just is what it is.
Right.
It's the same thing when you think about a company, a brand, a personality, whatever
Mhm.
the case is. That you're always, if you're not getting hate mail, you're probably doing something wrong.
Right. Yeah. So I can't remember who says this, but you can love me, you can hate me, but you will not ignore me.
That's right.
Yeah. So something I did end of last year, I want to say maybe November, ish, is we looked for a unifying message,
Mm-hmm.
and our unifying message is close more sales. Right. So I bought closemoresales.com and everything. All our messages like we help you close more sales.
Yeah.
So I want your perspective. Is that a brand promise or is that marketing?
It is a brand promise. The only thing that we would want to work through on it is making it what we call it more of a relevant differentiation.
Mhm.
Is that there is a very, very distinct difference in the way that Steve Trang believes that you would close more sales versus somebody else would close more
Mhm.
sales. Let me give you an example. This is I use this example all the time because it's such a good one. Years ago, Quicken Loans came out with a product.
Mhm.
It was called a Rocket Mortgage,
Mhm.
right? And so like everything's Rocket this and Rocket that and Rocket Mortgage, right? You know what the difference between a Rocket Mortgage and any other mortgage is?
The Rocket?
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
They're the exact same mortgage. In fact, they did such a good job. They literally rebranded Quicken Loans to Rocket Loans. It's Rocket Companies now. That's
Yeah.
how good of a job they did with the promise
Right.
because they created a relevant differentiation,
Mhm.
which is here is our secret sauce, original recipe,
Mhm.
the thing we do better than anybody else. And so
Right.
that would be the only thing. A tier down from close more sales would be is what are the doctrines?
Mhm.
Like, what are the non-negotiables? What are the things you believe about sales that somebody else would disagree with? How do we create the widest point of friction there
Mhm.
so that you can have the dominance in the space on that?
Yeah. Gotcha. So the joke in media says like we don't believe you need a six pack to sell.
There's a good starting place.
Okay. So then how do we go from? So I wrote this down as you were saying this. So you got the brand promise, what you say, where you say it, and ask. So I just put who, what, where, ask.
Yeah.
Is that way oversimplifying it?
Yeah. Brand is who we are. Marketing is what we say. Advertising is where we say it. Sales is when we ask.
Yeah.
Very simple. Yeah.
So the difference then between branding and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So what you say.
Yeah.
So then is StoryBrand then on the
That's
what?
right. That's right. Story branding comes in at the what you say level.
Gotcha.
And so I'm going to get very clear with how the voice now sounds. So
Mhm.
we're having a conversation right now. It's like you see somebody's face, that's the brand.
Mhm.
The tone of their voice, the intonations, the type of words they use, the cadence of their voice, that would be the marketing side of it.
Yeah.
And I would want to see that it's consistent across the entire company.
Gotcha.
This is especially the disconnect in the real estate space, right?
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What's the disconnect?
We send out the postcards, we do the cold calling, we PPC, we text people, we do all these things, and it has one tone to it. And then the salesperson shows up at my door and they sound completely different than what you sent me. And then we get to the TC and they're like, it's like a whole different company all over again.
It's a disjointed experience.
Correct. I mean, it's just this like wave of, and then we get to the end of the thing and we wonder why nobody gives us a testimonial, right? If you go to an Apple store, from the point that you hit the website to the point that you fill out a satisfaction survey at the very end, the experience never changes.
Right.
If you go to IKEA, the experience never changes. It's one experience all the way through.
Yeah.
I think that is the biggest missed opportunity in the real estate space specifically, in business in general, is that there is no cohesion at all to how we present our message.
See, that is way better answer than I thought it was going to be. I was thinking more along the lines of like, you know, your marketing copy on your website is different than your direct mail piece. It's different than the billboard.
Yeah, marketing is top to bottom. I mean, you put a post out this morning, so I feel free to do it. Is you put a post out this morning that you're hiring salespeople.
Yeah.
Right. That's part of your marketing. It's
Right.
internal, external, the entirety across the entire business. And so when we think about it, if we thought about it like that, all of a sudden it would make us reflect on it a little bit more and stop and say, okay, every single thing I do is marketing my business. What should it actually be saying? And why would I leave that up to each individual member of my team to decide what our core messaging is?
Gotcha.
Right? So I want to brand script that on the front end, and then I'm going to give that brand script to every single person in this company and say, this is how we talk. This is how we sound. This is the terms we use. This is the way we say it, and make sure that there's a cohesion across.
How do we do that?
Yeah. So you start with the brand script. So you sit down with a StoryBrand certified guide, or you can do the book and you can try to do it that way. I've not read one yet where they tried to do it by themselves out of the book that it made much sense. And you walk through that journey, and you walk through. They ask key questions. You come up with specific terminology, and then that brand script becomes same as what we do with systems and processes with Sharper. We sit down and we build out your business systems and processes. We built out a process ownership chart with your team yesterday, right? This is the outline for how we're going to function and operate as a business. A brand script is the same thing on the marketing side. Here is how we're going to talk about our company, leveraging ChatGPT and things like that now to take that brand script and plug it into AI tools and maximize that is critical. I always got that question before. It's like, well, when AI comes out, there goes your job as a marketer. I'm like, oh no, my job just began. Like I just became more valuable because now it takes that front end work to make it thoughtful and intentional and consistent, that now I can multiply all of that into AI and do some really cool stuff.
And I think that's what we've seen consistently with AI. Like the people that are afraid of it might need to work on their skills.
It's going to put a premium on high level skills.
Expertise.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's going to put a premium on expertise, and it will diminish if you don't have an expertise. If it's not something that you're getting better at, it will erase the middle for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have very legitimate reasons to be concerned. But if you're elite, then you're excited.
Yeah, it reminds me of a great quote Seth Godin uses all the time, which is, basically when you tell me that you're going to take something of mine or you're going to take it away from me, it means great, I don't have to do it anymore and I can go do something more interesting.
Right.
And that's how I look at all that kind of stuff is, okay, cool, you want to take that away? Great. It just means I get to go do more interesting things now.
Right.
So I love it.
Most business owners waste their time and money on solutions that never fix the root problems. They'll address all the symptoms due to slow revenue, and because they're only fixing the consequences, the real problem stays hidden and the cycle of wasting time and money continues. It's like having a lingering headache that won't go away despite trying every over-the-counter medicine. When in reality, you should have just gone to the doctor and had them figure out exactly what was causing the headache. And that's what's so difficult about business. You can see and feel the symptoms and yet struggle to find it. Now imagine you can find a prescription that doesn't just mask the symptoms, but actually addresses the root cause. Where would your business be if you address that right now? That's what our sales event is about. Your marketing doesn't suck, your leads aren't bad, and your operations aren't terrible. It's that you haven't addressed what actually makes you money in wholesale, which is the conversations you have with homeowners. It's critical that you build trust with sellers, demonstrate that you fully understand their situation, know exactly what's keeping them up at night, and paint the ideal outcome that leads them to a better future by working with you. That's what it takes to get signed contracts and keep your business going. Simply put, at our event, you'll walk away with the framework, phrases, questions, documents, and process to close more sales and buy more houses. Join the hundreds of others who have come to our live event and dramatically grown their business. Our event is happening soon and is available for you to join only if you're willing to take the pill. So you started your agency, and then
Yeah.
what?
So I was going really well. I had 7-8 clients. I helped launch a skincare company. We won some awards doing that. I was helping a guy out in Utah with a large education company. I was a brand consultant for them for a little while. And then Austin started with Sharper. So Austin's my brother. Austin had owned 8 Papa John's pizza franchises and had kind of was going to retire. And Gary said, hey, why don't you come help me part-time? And that turned into Austin's now the full-time CFO of Sharper and does all that. And he sat down, he was doing all their finances and going through everything. He said, hey, we have about 5 different marketing vendors. Would you want to put in a proposal? And so I did. And I became fractional CMO for Sharper. And then Gary goes, hey, you've got some business experience. You've ran a few businesses and done some different things. I helped do a consolidation on a pretty large media company and things like that. He goes, you think you would want to do some consulting? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do a couple. And so I did one here and I did one there. And last year I did 113. So it's kind of blossomed from there.
You still have your agency?
I do. I usually look for very specific, very special projects that I want to work on every now and then. I've kind of scaled it down. I converted it more to a software company. So I have software now and treat it a little bit more on that side. I'm starting to lean back into it. I'm getting a lot of interest in that fractional CMO type of thing. So I'm vetting about 5 different companies right now, determining which ones I want to kind of help out. But within Sharper, it'll all be internal with Gary and Austin and myself. So
Gotcha. So you worked with over 600 businesses.
Yeah.
So we talked about the 3 things you've seen. What was it that can lead to a train? What was it? 3 things that to do to train record business.
Yes. Yeah. When we run a business, there's really only 3 variables. And like to oversimplify business as a whole, there's really only 3 things we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about people, we're talking about processes, and we're talking about the market. So every time we have a problem in a business, we have to look at it and say, is this a people problem? Is this a process problem? Or is the market telling us that we need to make an adjustment to all of it all together?
Right.
And so we always start with measurables. So we start at the top of a process ownership chart. We work our way down. The innovator of the business is accountable for the purpose. The leader of the business is accountable for the profit. The department heads are accountable for performance. And then the employees are accountable for process. And we run metrics on each of those. And we determine first and foremost, is this a process problem? In other words, how we're making the cheeseburgers, does it actually make money? Does it actually make sense? Can we make them fast enough for us to be profitable at an acceptable number?
Yeah.
If the process is solid, now I look and say, great, now we're going to put the people in the seats. I mean, we go to all these events and if I hear right people, right seats one more time, right, I'm going to lose my mind.
Why?
Right people, right seats. Right people, right seats. Because it's completely subjective. They have no baseline for why they're saying that. And that's
Jim Collins said it.
And that's what Sharper does, is we look and say, let's clarify what the seat is. Let's put measurables around it. What are the metrics? Right seat. What actually makes money? We did this yesterday, right? We talked through the meeting. We're like, how are we going to make this seat? How does it make so much money? So there's the seat. And then the people is not just, I got a buddy. He seems like a really nice guy. I think he should come work for me. That's usually how that works, right?
Yeah.
So we don't clarify the seat. We go get our buddy and we put the 2 together, and then we wonder why the business doesn't work.
So Jim Collins, I think it's from Good to Great.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. It was like, you got to get the right people on the bus.
Yes.
And then once they're on the bus, we put them in the right seats.
It's a great philosophy. The problem is visionaries just went and said, well, I have the subjective knowledge to just figure that out on my own.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the seats are, what are they? How would you put it? Generic job descriptions.
Right.
Right. Not specific to your business.
Right.
That's specific to your market. It's just like, okay, this is what an acquisition manager does.
Right. Exactly.
So I think what you're talking about is like, we need to really examine the seats
That's right.
for your company.
That's right. So we're looking for two things. We did this yesterday with you, which was performance and potential.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to look and say, what is the baseline minimum metric we would need for this role?
Yeah.
What is the number we should be targeting? And then what would be an exceptional person in this role?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to look and say, does this person have the potential to do that? We're going to look at a predictive index. We're going to look at their resume and say, do they fit the potential to do this? And then we're going to use what we call a 9-box. And we're going to 9-box that out and say, here is the seat. Could the person hit baseline metrics? Do they have the potential to do the job?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes and yes, then great. Now we can go to the next step and talk about this person. But I find more often than not, they can't tell somebody what success looks like in the role. They can't really give them a clear description of what the job title is. They don't know what the 90-day onboarding looks like.
Mm-hmm.
They're not sure what exactly this person's going to be doing all day. And then when they fail, we kind of look at the person and be like, wrong person, you know? It's like, no, it was the wrong seat. You didn't even give them a seat to sit in.
Yeah. The seat wasn't ready.
Right.
So as we're talking about this, I'm thinking right now, the process map that we put together, not the process map, the
process ownership chart.
Process ownership chart, which for those of you guys that are familiar with Traction is the accountability chart.
Yeah.
Right. You used a funny expression yesterday, right? Like, who belongs in that? Is like, well, we only have one throat to choke.
Yeah.
So like, the way I always put it is, whose head's rolling?
That's
if this
right.
doesn't get done, whose head's rolling?
That's right. We can't have more than one person in the seat because if we have two people, then nobody's accountable.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking here is we'll take my process owner chart.
Yeah.
/ accountability chart. I'll have that as a downloadable. So you guys look for the link in the show notes. Team's going to be upset with me later on. But look for the link later on in the show notes so that as we're talking about this makes more sense. Because we're going to be talking about this as an abstract.
Yeah.
If you guys want to download this later on, you can see it, visualize it.
Yeah.
Then they have a reference point.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll get you one of ours so you can have something to put in there that'll be a little bit cleaner from an understanding of how it breaks down.
Yeah. Okay. So we have, so you were saying the innovator and leader.
Yeah. So one like clarifying thought to all of it is in a process ownership chart, we are not putting any titles.
Right.
These are the seats that have to take place in a business, whether it's one person sitting in all the seats or you have a team of 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
These are the processes that have to take place for us to make money as a business.
Yeah.
Now it's just a matter of putting people in those seats. I mean, if you ever saw Moneyball, it's exactly this. I got to have X number of hits. I got to have X number of home runs. I got to have X average batting average.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who can get me those numbers and just backfilling the seats?
Yeah. So the traditional, when we talk about Traction, right? Because Traction like blew up.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So the EOS.
Yep.
Visionary, integrator.
Yes.
But you guys are different.
Right. We changed that because we kept running into it where when we said visionary, everybody heard owner.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would just kind of check out from the business and go into more of this ethereal, up in the sky, like man in the clouds kind of thing, who just dreams all day of how great the world's going to be. Right.
I like that role.
Yeah, everybody does. And it's called the owner of the business, right? You get to own the company. We identified the fact that each department of this company has different needs.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are more in an innovation. For example, like if we look at a business and they're struggling to bring in leads, we would look and say, you need to go innovate the marketing department, or you need to go innovate the sales department. You need to go innovate the finance department, or you need to go innovate other parts of the company. Mm-hmm. And others of them need to just be led and ran by the numbers, held accountable for their work, and we're not going to create chaos there.
Yeah.
What employees and team members want to know is, are you going to be creating chaos for me over the next 90 days, or is your expectation the same? So we take now the process ownership chart and we say, great, who's going to innovate this business? And we identify the parts of the business that need innovation. And then we say, great, who's going to lead, manage, hold accountable this business? And we identify the separate departments that person is going to lead, manage, and hold accountable. So that way the finance department knows we're not changing from QuickBooks this quarter, right? We're staying in our role. We're going to stay where we're at. But the marketing department should expect that every single week there's going to be adjustments. There's going to be modifications. We're working on some new things and we're making some changes.
Yeah.
You should expect that the innovator is going to be down there in the work of that.
And that was, it was kind of a funny moment yesterday because we have Larry.
Yes.
Right. And he's our artisan, right? Formerly craftsman for those PI.
Yes.
those of you guys sophisticated or are familiar with PI, right? Like the one thing that pisses him off is when I mess with his stuff, right?
Right.
I go in there, start moving things around, like he starts getting really aggravated.
Yeah, I get
right?
that.
And so when we had this conversation, like, all right, Steve's the innovator.
Right.
Steve's gonna come into marketing and messing stuff. I looked at him. I was like, all right, Larry, I'm gonna be in there. I'm gonna be messing with your stuff.
Yeah.
I need you to not be upset. I need you to give me grace.
That's right.
Because I'm gonna be in there,
Right.
making a mess.
And if we would have followed the traditional visionary model, it would just be every department would be on notice that Steve's going to come make a mess this quarter.
Yeah.
Right. Where this way we look and say it's a little clearer what's going on, what's happening, what's taking place. And secondly, we found it a much more scalable. That's always been the challenge with traction is it can take you to a certain level, but once you jump above that level, there are some missing components like that. Where and in a lot of businesses, the visionary and the innovator or the leader and the innovator are the same person right now. And so we just need to let the rest of the company know what's taking place in this quarter so we can make the right adjustments.
Yeah. And, in you explaining it in this way, this kind of makes more sense for me because I talk to Phil Green quite a bit. Like, I mean, someone I admire incredibly, right?
He's a good dude.
And I see Eric, a guy that's on his team, is constantly bouncing from department to department. And I was like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
That we have this guy who's like on loan to all these different departments.
Right.
But now when you say like he's the innovator.
Yeah. That's right.
Was that the vision?
I mean, when you look at Phil, it's kind of an ecosystem. So they have multiple companies and Phil kind of works as the master brain above all of them. And that's exactly what it is. And what you find is, not to bring it back to PI, Eric is not a traditional what you would call integrator profile. He's a captain, which you usually always would see in the innovator or in the CEO type of seat is more of a captain profile. But the way that their company is growing so quickly and the needs that they have, it demands that he's able to go in and say, okay, this company, this quarter, get ready for chaos. Eric's going to come in here and fix and solve problems, and then he'll be on to the next quarter. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. So, okay. So we have not visionary integrator, but innovator and leader. Yep. And then the next row, is performance.
Right.
So, because I went through this and I made I don't want to say mistake, right? Because I was putting Manny under Larry. Right? I was putting media under marketing. You're like, no.
Right.
It's performance based.
That's right.
So explain that.
So if we were going to look at, like we did yesterday, and we said to Manny, we're going to hold you accountable for performance. In other words, the videos you're putting out, the content we're creating, the things that we're doing need to lead to business results, right? We need to see performance from it. Then we're saying we're holding you accountable for outcomes, not work being done.
Yeah.
And so we can't put you under somebody who's then going to be accountable for your performance if we're holding you to it. I always use the same analogy for this. It's if you ever get confused between process and performance, just think of a boat going down a river. If the motor and the propeller is spinning, that's process. The weight coming behind the boat is performance.
Gotcha.
So if I'm asking you to turn the propeller, you're a process person. If I'm asking you to give me bigger waves, you're a performance person.
Right.
And that chart should be indicative of that. That's why every time I teach a process ownership chart to somebody for the first time, I always start by teaching an org chart first. And I walk them through, here's the regular traditional model, here's the flat org chart, which like if you go to like a not-for-profit or like Tom's Shoes, it's like a flat org chart, which means everybody's on the same level. I call it the delusional org chart, right? Somebody's got to be in charge. There's matrix models, there's divisional models in org charts, CEO, COO, all the titles. That is not what we built yesterday.
No.
What we built yesterday was here's processes, and whether it's Manny, Steve, Larry, whoever, this stuff has to happen for us to function as a business. And now it's just identifying if somebody wants to own the performance of it or whether they want to just do the work to get us there.
Yeah. So that's performance. And then underneath that was process.
Right.
So again, guys, look at the link. Look for the link in the show notes. Hopefully it's in there.
Yeah.
So the process was different than what I've seen before.
Yeah. So when we get down to the process level, we're going to identify the actual process for us, process maps that explain that part of the job. So let's just break this down, right? So if we're in the marketing department, one of those things in there is going to say lead gen. So how are we generating leads? That would be a performance metric. How many leads did we generate? Lead gen. we would have a process box below that would then say, here is the channels we're going to lead gen on. It's going to be cold call, PPC, mail, PPL, so forth and so on. Those then, we would have a process map for how we do each one of those. So that the person who owns those processes, we could go to them and say, look, you're accountable for, let's use PPC. And I always get the same thing, which is, well, we have a vendor, right? We have a vendor that does PPC. But you're still accountable for the process, whether it's this vendor or that vendor, or you're doing it yourself.
You still need the results.
We still are looking at who is accountable for the process of this taking place. Then we're going to take that process map and we're going to find in it all the diamond shapes in a process map that become our key process indicators that tell me whether or not this person is doing their job. Are they following our process? And I'm going to measure those every single day to see if the process is working.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go process daily, performance weekly, profit monthly, purpose quarterly. And then I can see within a matter of 3 days, if I have 3 days of bad process, guess what happens? There goes my week.
Yeah.
Right? If I have 3 weeks of bad performance, guess what? There goes my month. If I have 3 months of bad performance, guess what? There goes my quarter. And so we start from the bottom and work our way up.
Yeah.
We're able to find those holes in the pipe a lot faster than if we wake up at the end of the quarter and say, oh man, we didn't hit our goals again. Like, what happened? Horrible way to do business.
Yeah. I'm too familiar with that way of doing business.
Me too. Been there, done that.
So one of the major light bulb moments I had, and when you were putting it all together, is like, now that we have all the processes and who owns it, now we have a specific list of all the processes that we need to document.
There you go.
Right. So now we say, okay, like basically almost every person has anywhere from 3 to 7 processes.
Yep.
That needs to be documented. So we have like probably a year's worth of documenting right now.
Right.
From that list.
Right. And it's just going through there and sitting down with that person and saying, walk me through from start to finish. Where does this process start? Where does it finish? What are the steps in between? And now I can very quickly, and we use another tool called a SIPOC, where we'll just go through with them in a SIPOC. And it's kind of like a speedy version of a process map and say, great, give me the 3 to 5 points I'm going to measure across the line here to figure out whether or not you're following your process or not. Because what I don't want is, we talked about this yesterday, I don't want you coming in here with your talent and just making it happen. Because the day you don't feel like using your talent is the day my business goes under. Right. You follow my process. I was with a client recently, we went through this. Incredibly talented salespeople. I mean, they could just wake up and get a sale. And then the market shifted. So back to our 3 things, right? Something changed. The market shifted on them and all of a sudden it wasn't working anymore.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't know what's going on. I got these incredibly talented salespeople. They just can't close anything. And I said to him, I was like, do you trust their process or your process? And he's like, I trust my process. He'd been in real estate for 25 years. I trust my process. I'm like, great. Then you outline that, and that's what we hold them accountable to. Because we're betting on you as the owner, you as the expert here in your process, not their skills.
Yeah.
When things are going well, talent can do great.
Right.
When things are not going well, I need to know the process so I know on a daily basis whether or not we're going to get to where we want to go.
You spent countless weeks going back and forth with a homeowner only to lose a deal because the seller changed their mind, another wholesaler made an unreasonable offer, or what the seller needs from the sale, you just can't pay. Now imagine you've got the ultimate control on a property that you just locked up, meaning you're on title and every decision has to go through you, eliminating virtually every external threat. That's why the installment method was created. Through installment payments, you have full control of the property as your name is now on the title. Any decision the seller wants to make now has to be approved by you. No longer can they pull out equity, go with another buyer, or change their mind. Imagine combining the best of creative finance with the flexibility of marketing the property on the MLS to collect the most amount of revenue possible, all while having total control of the property. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The concept here is simple, but implementing is challenging. So visit wholesale2024.com to learn more so that you'll never have another deal blow up. So you mentioned SIPOC. I wrote this down.
Yeah.
So the way I had our process owner chart set up, in my mind, it was kind of like SIPOC, right? Because we had leads coming in. So we had marketing,
right?
And then, organic and versus paid, but marketing, and then sales, and then fulfillment, and then finances. The way I had it put together
Yeah.
on our chart.
That's right.
But SIPOC is a little bit different than what we did yesterday.
Yeah, a SIPOC is going to tell me what the pipeline of a business or a specific process is. So for those who don't know, it stands for supply, input, process, output, customer. Easiest way to explain a SIPOC, I always do the same thing, which is think of it like it's a restaurant. Supply, food truck brings the food, right? Input, they put all the food in the refrigerator. Process, chef takes out the food, makes the food. Output, he puts it on a plate, sets it on a little hot counter on the top there. Waitress picks it up, sets it on the table, customer. Supply, input, process, output, customer. In between each letter, then, I can put a measurable. And I can say, great, the food showed up, so that would be the S. The I, did it make it into the refrigerator? And so I would have a measurable there, a performance indicator, or rather more specifically, a process indicator that says food in fridge 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Why, yes or no, right? In between input and process, I could then say how much food got taken out, how much waste was there, right? He makes the meal, how many meals were made that made it on the counter, how many got dropped on the way, right? Food on the counter to on the customer's table, measurable, measurable. So that's how we use a SIPOC, is to understand what's going on. In real estate, it's even simpler, right? Supply, marketing. Input, acquisitions. Process, am I going to flip it? Am I going to wholesale it? Am I going to wholetail it? Am I going to innovate it? Whatever the case is there. That's my process. Output, now we're at the TC level. The TC's taking the paperwork. They're doing their job. Customer, did I get a testimonial review from somebody who bought or sold my house? Right. So that's our SIPOC, measurables all along the way, right? Leads, appointments, all the way down the line.
Yeah.
So
the process owner chart is not quite the same.
No, the process ownership chart is just telling me what's going on in the business. The order of it is just by nature of the fact that this is where the business starts and this is where the business finishes. It has similarities, but
some
kind of a
overlap, but
different concept.
not really the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back then, so we're saying the thing that kills you the most is when I say, well, Brandon, I just need the right people in the right seats.
Yeah.
So why do business owners get people wrong?
Because they try to use antiquated means for identifying whether or not this is the right person or not. Statistically, we know if you just look at a resume or an interview, you're about 11% sure you just hired the right person, and you're about 89% sure you did not. I always explain it the same way, which is we want to hire with rifles, not shotguns. Most hiring gets done as a rifle. I'm going to hire 10 people, and I hope one of them works out. That's a horrible way to hire. The way to hire is hire with a shotgun. Hire 3 people, and 2 of them should work out. Much better odds. The waste is reduced incredibly.
Yeah.
And so if I've already identified over here and I've done my work to identify the processes and the measurables and what the seat should look like.
What success looks like in that seat.
What success looks like in the seat. How it's gonna thrive in my business. How they're gonna do good and how I'm gonna do good. It also tells me what type of person should be sitting in that seat.
Yeah.
So I'm going to look at 3 things. I'm going to look at the resume in the interview because I do need to know if they have talents and abilities. Have you done this before? What's your experience? What they're going to tell me, all the jobs they didn't get fired from, right? All the places they were great, how awesome they are, the people in the world who like them the most as their references, and they're going to give me all that information. Then I got to know, do they match me on core values? This is the part that gets missed all the time. Core values exercises, we as a company, and then me testing them on an interview as to whether or not they match those core values. And then I'm going to look at, for us, their cognitive ability and their drive. That's what we get for predictive index.
Yeah.
Can they learn quickly? Do they absorb information quickly? And then do they have the drive to do the job? And now I'm going to take that person that I've properly vetted out, and I'm going to put them in the right seat.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about this is how Chick-fil-A would do it. I mean, they'll get. I talked to a guy who owns one by me. They'll take 100 employees, and they'll predictive index test 100 employees.
Oh, really?
They have a PI for somebody to work in the drive-thru at a Chick-fil-A. That's why they're all the same person. And so they'll vet them, and they'll get about 10 that have the right profile for the job. He'll take the 10, he'll sit them down, and he'll walk through them the core values of Chick-fil-A. You could probably guess what they are because if you know anything about Chick-fil-A, they have very
Definitely
public
service.
core values. So they're going to go through those core values, and he said that usually gets rid of about 5 of them. And now he's got 5, and he's going to look at knowledge, skills, and experience, and he's going to say who's the most knowledgeable, who's the most skilled, and who has the most experience, and he's going to hire 1 or 2 of them. So he went from 100 down to 1 to fill a seat over here. But what are the odds that this person's the right person versus
Significantly
us
higher.
just guessing?
Right.
And the point of it is it's two-sided. a lot of times we look at it and say, well, that obviously I'm going to make a lot more money for my business. And you're right. You should. We look at it should be about 34% higher efficiency than if you just hire anybody. Like hiring 3 and getting 1 for free is basically the way to think about it. But that being said, it's also not fair to that person. I mean, they told you in a predictive index that they don't like risk. They don't like being rushed. They like rules. And they don't like dominating over people. And oh, by the way, they'd rather sit in a cubicle by themselves.
Yeah.
And you're going to say, awesome, salesperson.
Right.
Right? That's the point, is you're going to make that person miserable. I mean, we talked about this yesterday. I was with a client, and they have 200 employees. And some of them are the happiest, most joyful people. They love their job. And the others go home at night and sit in a dark room by themselves and try to regroup because they just bad fit.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want to do that to people.
Yeah. I've said before, like, we hire people that are bad with details by design. Because if you're good at details, I'm really concerned about your sales abilities.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Like we said, what makes them great makes them terrible.
Yeah. And I've had like these battles forever with my administrative team. They're like, man, why are these people so incompetent? And I was like, well, if they were good at the things I'm asking you to do, you wouldn't have a job.
That's right. If they were masters of filling out the CRM, it would also mean they're incredibly patient, which means that they would tell a seller, oh, yeah, we'll call you back in a month. It's no big deal.
Yes, it's fine.
There would be no pushing for us to get a contract signed today. So we have to look at that role. And if we do our job right, they would be doing well enough at sales that we could hire them an assistant to fill out the CRM for them, or buy them a recorder to transcribe their notes.
Is there anything else we're missing as far as people goes?
No, I mean, that's usually what we look at, is those 3 main factors. We're going to look at it through 4 different assessments. Desire, whether or not they have we look at it head, heart, hands, and feet. Do they have the drive and the cognitive ability? Do they have the desire, the heart? Hands, do they have the skills and the ability? And then feet, where could they move in my business? And if I can answer those 4 questions, that yes, they have the right drive, yes, they match us on core values, yes, they have the skills, and yes, they're either going to sit in this role or they're going to move up in the business as time goes on. If I can answer those 4 questions, I feel pretty good about this person. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Processes.
Yeah.
So you were saying that that's the other thing that can train wreck your business.
Right. When we don't have clearly defined processes that are being reviewed and adjusted on a regular basis, then we have this great, gifted, and talented person now sitting in the wrong seat in the business. And it's like giving somebody a dull knife.
So you worked with Kristen Stampini not too long ago.
Yeah.
So Kristen was my coach.
Nice.
Back in the day when I was doing Proctor Systems, right? Realtor days.
Yeah.
I want to say maybe this is maybe 2014, 2015, around here, like almost 10 years ago. And she's like, Steve, I just read this book, great book, Traction. You should read it.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, fine. And I read it all the way through. What did I take from it? Man, we need better processes.
Yeah.
After I finished reading it, didn't do a damn thing. Right? And then 2018, someone else was like, hey, this is a great book, Traction.
You should read it.
You should read it. It's like, oh, I already read it. But you know what? Let me go through it again.
Yeah.
And then we started implementing it. But what are the parts I could implement? L10, regular meetings, quarterly, annual. I could do that part.
Right.
Right. Get it, want it, capable.
Easy enough.
Got that part, right? People.
Right.
Got that part. But this whole section on like processes,
Right.
it sucks.
It does.
So like, how do you really impart the what's the word? The gravity.
Yes. So if you think about it in terms, I'm a big basketball fan. Obviously, I brought up the Bulls, right? So if you think about the Bulls in like the 80s, it was give Michael Jordan the ball and everybody get out of the way. And
it was a process.
And that works. But that was a people thing, right? There's not really a process. Doug Collins, great coach, awesome, did not have a plan in place for that. And so they brought in a guy named Phil Jackson, and Phil Jackson started a thing called the Triangle and became one of the most successful coaches in all NBA history, and also became one of the wealthiest coaches in all NBA history, just simply because he was able to implement a system to fit the talent that was sitting there, and said, if you can put the talent in the seats, then he's going to get paid a lot of money. Bill Belichick gets paid a lot of money because he has a process. He had a process for winning with the people that he had.
Right.
Not so much now, but that's another thing, right? Those processes, they come in place. I was a big 85 Chicago Bears fan, right? All Ryan in the 34 defense won the 1985 Super Bowl. Same thing. He took a less talented team and put them in the right process, and all of a sudden it all works.
Right.
Now, that being said, what does it take to develop that process is the painstaking work of saying, I'm not just going to go run out here and grind out work. I said it to your team yesterday, which is turning players into coaches. Mm-hmm. You're the best player on the team. We talked to Manny yesterday. I could hand you a chunk of video and you could probably chop it up faster than 90% of the people in the space and make it look really cool and do some really neat stuff. Mm-hmm. Could you get 10 people to do that though? And that's that growth opportunity there. And most of the time, thankfully for us at Sharper, that requires some coaching. Mm-hmm. That requires somebody to sit with you and pull those processes out of you and refine those processes and figure it out. And how is that all going to work and what's going to take place? I mentioned at the beginning, like my wife is a crazy entrepreneur. I showed you yesterday her PI. A way off the chart to the right and D way off to the left. I mean, just can come up with an idea, execute it, and start a business tomorrow if she wanted to, and probably make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. However, the struggle is, and the why we complement each other well, is the processes side. How do we keep that running and moving forward? And what's the
once
patience?
You get bored with this process.
That's right. And so you have to figure that out.
Yeah.
If you didn't marry somebody where that's that natural fit, and where I don't necessarily have the same vision she does. Mm-hmm. She wanted to get into flipping houses. She already has the property. She picked it out. She's already got everything laid out. She's already convinced people to give her she already raised the capital for it. Yeah. It's done. Like in a month. I mean, in a new area. Mm-hmm. All of that, now the execution on it is where you have to have the other side of it. And I think, I'm the world's worst salesperson for 1,000 reasons, mm-hmm. but I have not seen that done well yet unless you finally make the investment and the time and the mm-hmm. energy and the effort to say, somebody's going to come in and dissect what we do, ask us the tough questions, lean out those processes, figure out all of the waste, all of the stuff that we don't need to be doing, and find a process that makes money. Mm-hmm. I find that to be the biggest struggle is, well, I really enjoy doing this, but it doesn't make money. Right. So then let's either start it not for profit and you can go enjoy doing it, or let's figure out how we maximize this machine over here.
Yeah. There was a story. I can't remember where I read it, but basically in the lobby, right? So it was a big company, but in the lobby, they had these two printers, right? And the printer goes out. And they're like, hey, let's get that printer replaced. So they do, right? It's like a $2,000 printer, whatever.
Yeah.
And then someone eventually asked, like, what does that printer do? And they're like, well, I mean, then they're like, well, we don't know, right? That's around. Yeah. And they'd find like someone that's been with the company for like over 10 years. Right? I was like, right. Well, this is the printer we use to like spiral bound our presentations that we would bring to the clients. They're like, well, when's the last time we did that? It's like,
it's so true.
Right? So they haven't spiral bounded anything, and they just spent $2,000 on a new printer, and there's two of them
right
in a lobby that no one's ever used.
Yeah.
Are you finding that?
100%, and more on the side of, I mean, the term is human capital. Mm-hmm. The more you're sitting with somebody and saying, what do you do? And they're like, I'm just so busy all the time, every day. I'm busy all day. Okay, great. What processes are you doing on a daily basis? Mm-hmm. What trackable, measurable, replicatable processes? And as soon as somebody says, well, you can't process map what I do. It's just, there's just so much of it. I sit with them and I pull out my old friend, the SIPOC, mm-hmm. and I say, great, when does the ball get passed to you and when do you pass the ball? Mm-hmm. And you walk them through that process and you either find, number one, they're doing a lot of busy work that doesn't necessarily do anything for the business mm-hmm. and is not efficient, or you do find very clear metrics and you find out that they are actually doing the work of 2 or 3 people. And we've got to adjust for it and modify for it. Mm-hmm. We need to change the process of how they do it.
Yeah.
So anytime you are refining, leaning, looking over processes is time well spent, because it's getting better and better and better and better at what we do. Yeah. And if you could imagine Amazon not reviewing their processes on a regular basis, could you imagine like Apple not reviewing processes on a regular basis? Mm-hmm. And then we come to a business that we want to grow and scale and thrive, and we're like, we don't have time for that.
We'll be number one in our market.
You're right. Always the same, right? I'm going to be number one in my market, but I'm never going to look at my processes.
Right.
I mean, we say to folks all the time, we have what we call a System 60 meeting. Every mm-hmm. single week, you should be sitting down with a process map and either documenting or refining a process. What process are we adjusting today? And what you find is the process may not have changed, but now your team, the wheels are starting to rattle because now everybody's doing it different. Mm-hmm. Centers them back up to the process again.
Yeah.
It just has to be part of our business.
for someone that's listening right now,
Yeah.
that wants this help, because I can tell you, like, doing process mapping is like my books.
Right.
It's like, I'll do it this weekend.
Right,
All
right.
No, I'll do it this weekend.
Yeah.
And it's like 9 months goes by. It's like, crap, I haven't done my books.
Yeah, right. It's a tedious job, but once it's done and you have it, it's incredibly valuable.
It's one of those that keeps getting kicked down the road, So if someone's listening right now and they want help with process mapping, like, what would you suggest to them?
Yeah. So sharperbusiness.com, you can go on there and fill out a form, and they'll walk you through like how we do process mapping, what it looks like. I always warn the same thing ahead of time, which is we need to set the business up before. It would be like me handing you a diagram of a triangle offense without you having a way that you do things as a business.
Right.
It's not going to do anything for you. It's going to be a waste. So that's always the thing, is set the business up, implement it properly. Then now those processes make sense.
Right. So we need to start off with the process ownership chart.
Right. Because we got to identify what processes we need, who's going to own them. Because in the meantime, somebody does have to just figure it out with their talents.
Yeah.
Till we can get it documented. But our goal is to get to the place where we have processes, is what we do. Then we can create the procedures, how we're going to do it, and then our policies of when we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And so if you walk into a business and they have processes, procedures, and policies, the way that they do things around there, now all of a sudden that talented, gifted person that I just hired is exponentially better at their job than if I would have just said to them, just go figure it out.
And then the third thing we say that can train wreck your business is the market.
Right.
So, and we kind of experienced that the last couple of years.
We see it everywhere. And, you know, in real estate, it's almost like a ripple that comes from the coasts, right? Like the coasts feel the pain first, then it ripples into the Midwest. And like the ripple seems to die a little bit, and then it ripples back out. And now the coasts hurt again. And, you know, our clients in New York and California usually get the brunt of it. And then the Midwest doesn't feel it as bad, and then it ripples back out a little bit. But it's the variable you can't account for. And it's the variable that entrepreneurs thrive in. If nothing ever changed, if I said, hey, Steve, here's 20 processes that will never change, and here's 20 people who will sit in those roles, and they're never going to change, and it's always going to be the same, it's never going to be different, there will never be any problems to solve, you'd be like,
nightmare.
I'm out, right?
This is a nightmare.
This is a nightmare, right? Because there's no innovation, I don't have to come up with any creative ideas, and I will never have a competitive advantage. Markets create competitive advantages.
Yeah.
It's Warren Buffett. You know, you're running in when everybody else is running out. You make your money when there's blood in the streets.
Right.
And that's what we find with the markets, is it's actually your competitive advantage as an entrepreneur.
Yep.
And so don't look at it as a negative. Look at it as a we need to pull these processes back out, make sure they make sense. We found it during COVID, the people side of it. Great salespeople, A over B salespeople during COVID, and they were all on the phones. B over A salespeople performed better. We had to take a lot of those mavericks and move them into different roles and find other people to step into those roles to do it.
Really?
Because the market demanded it. The market demanded an adjustment.
Interesting. What else, you know, for everyone that's listening, you know, again, you've worked with 600 plus, over 100 last year alone.
Yeah.
100 in-person consults.
Yeah.
What are some other things that you've noticed that people listening can take back and implement or incorporate right away?
Yeah, I mean, from a high level, don't discount what you do. I mean, I'm always trying to make sure that people feel encouraged. Like at the end of the day, it takes an incredible amount of talent to start a business, run a business, operate a business, and function a business. It's the reason why entrepreneurs feel like the loneliest people in the world, because there's nowhere you really go unless you're in a mastermind group or something like that, where people understand what you're trying to do. So don't discount what you're doing. There's an incredible amount of value in it. But also understand that it is going to require of you that you invest in yourself. This is the problem we run into more than anything else. If we put on an event for Sharper and it's around systems and processes or how you're going to make more money next year, we sell tickets all day. If we say, hey, we need you to come because we're going to do a leadership seminar on you growing and becoming a better leader, it's like crickets, right? That idea of becoming the person that your company needs. I sit with teams all the time and we'll lay out a 5-year plan. Here's the 5-year vision of where we're going as a business, and it's impactful, right? It's big. You know, I was with somebody the other day, and they're like a $10 million company. In the next 5 years, they want to be at $100 million. And I said, here's this business 5 years from now. Here's the 30 to 40 additional employees we're going to have to hire. Here's all the capital we're going to raise. do we feel like the people that are here today are the people that can run that business? And they all say the same thing. Absolutely not. Like, I can't manage 12 people. I can't even manage myself right now.
Right.
I say, great. So we all are understanding either you're going to have to become those people or we're going to have to go hire those people.
Yeah.
And so if you don't become that person, then the company will outgrow you. And that's no more true than with the owner. Is if he is not himself becoming a better person and growing as a person, his company will outgrow him, and he'll either hurt his business or he'll become so frustrated because he's capped the growth of his people. I mean, with Sharper, that's, Gary knows it, and Gary does a great job of it, is of developing himself, because if he's not personally developing himself, he knows that we have coaches of people who are out here working and in businesses all day and having high-level conversations. He knows he's got to keep the ceiling high, because if we catch him, we're not going to sit under it for long. He needs to keep going too.
Yeah. David Richter was on the show not too long ago, and we were talking, and it's like, yeah, Gary Harper today is very different than Gary Harper he worked for.
Yeah, I mean, for context, I've known Gary since I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my first jobs, Gary was working for Icon Office Solutions, and he got me a job working in a copy center at a hospital, that he was working at. So I've known Gary for years, and that's a good testimony. And I've known David for years, and that's a testament to Gary as a person, and it's the reason why we don't really have to do any recruiting. We don't really have to. We get pretty high level talent because he keeps the bar pretty high.
One of the things that, I've had people ask me, like, why do I keep investing in personal development? Like, why can't I just rest? And part of it, I can't rest. But the other thing too, is I have this healthy paranoia, which is that someone's gunning for me.
So true.
I don't know who, right? If I'm not growing, this is something else I learned. This is from a KW program a long time ago when they were recruiting me. It was that talented people will work alongside you, until the day they no longer see you as a vehicle for their success.
Yeah.
The moment I don't see Brandon being helpful for me to grow my business, hey, Brandon, thanks for everything, I'm off over here.
Right. It's we look at it through trust and alignment, right? Do I trust you? Core values. Alignment. Do you align with the purposes of where I'm going? So if I can't answer those two questions for you, create a path forward, we're going to have a hard time with the long-term relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a very similar situation recently. I was sitting with a couple, and the wife was very, she was kind of bothered because she's like, my husband's a workaholic. I get it all the time, right? He's a workaholic. He works all the time. He's working on the business all the time. And I've said this to several people, so it's not one person I'm targeting right now. But I've said this to many people, which is the thing you have to understand about an entrepreneur is that there is always this fear that if the ball stops, I'm not going to be able to get it rolling again. And so that growth mindset that has to exist is because if it ever stops, how do we get it moving again?
Yeah.
And that's that healthy growth mindset as a leader. To you, there's somebody coming from behind you. The other idea is if we don't keep moving, how do we keep it going?
Yeah.
Which gives you a great appreciation for guys who run high Fortune 500 businesses. Gives you a great appreciation for that single operator out there who has to motivate himself and keep himself going.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things that jump out here. There's John Maxwell, right? The law of the lid. It's that you can only help people as far as you can go. Something I learned a lot from Darren Hardy is that you can go your people can only go as far as you can lead them. Yeah. Likewise, you can only go as far as your people can help you go.
Yeah, 100%.
It goes both ways. And I've referenced this, like No Fear. Do you ever wear those No Fear t-shirts?
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah.
I had a cousin that he lived in that stuff. He had the t-shirts and the bumper sticker and all that stuff. Yeah.
There was always one is like, there's something along the lines of, I'm going to keep working and working because somewhere out there there's someone who's coming for me. And that message always resonated with me. I want to go back real quick to people. Yeah. So Cameron Herold, right? He wrote Vivid Vision. He wrote Second in Command. And I bought his course, right? It was a pretty good course. If you guys are listening, I'd be happy to be an affiliate. It was a really good course. And one of the things he talks about there in interviewing was different than anything I've ever heard from other places.
Okay.
And I would say, Brandon, first interview went really well. It looks like your core values fit and this and that. So we want to have a final interview with you. Now, for this final interview, what I need from you to do this final interview is I need a list of 10 people that I can call as a referral or for reference.
Yeah.
Right? Throw out a reference check. Nothing new. Right? You say, okay, great. Now we're going to sit down. And what do you say? C players aren't showing up
Right.
for the final interview. B players will get you 8. A players will get you 10.
Yeah.
Okay, great. You got the list. And he's going to go through. All right. So Brandon, when I call this person, I ask him this, and I ask him this, and I ask him this, and I ask him, what's he going to say?
Yeah.
Great. When I call, and then he's going to do it for all 10
Right.
for a final interview. He never calls them.
Yeah.
He never does the reference check. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can smell
Yes.
in that interview
100%.
if this is going to be like, if they're like being honest and forthright, or like, well, here's what happened.
Right. Trying to shade the story.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wanted your perspective on that.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's incredibly robust. There's a laziness in hiring that people don't usually even go to when I say to somebody, core values exercise, PI, full resume, clear interviewing process, they're just like, well, I'm never going to get anybody, And so I think that's the challenge. And I think it comes down to is, are you a place people would want to work? Am I recruiting you or are you recruiting me?
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge. I think that's an incredible process. I think we're in very similar. Like we have a very robust vetting to make sure this is somebody we'd even want to have on our team and be with us. I wish people would go to those levels.
Yeah.
I think it's a great process. I like that a lot. He had another one too, which was I believe they took you and your spouse to dinner. I thought, was that him or was that somebody else?
I don't remember that was him.
I felt like that was a really interesting way of doing it as well. Because we know this. Like for me, I do 113 clients a year. If my wife wasn't on board with this thing, I'd be in trouble. So that's the other side. I thought that was an interesting way of doing it too.
Yeah. He was a very, very interesting character. An unusual presenter.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was something else I was going to say there. Dang it. About interviewing. Core values.
Yeah.
So what do you do for core values?
Love it.
Check on interview.
Right. So the traditional way of doing it is, Steve, our core values are hard work, integrity, honesty. Are those yours too? Unless you're an idiot, you're going to say, oh yeah, that's me as well. Same exercise we do with a business owner to flesh out core values, we do in an interview process. So I'm going to say to you, Steve, tell me about the most impactful people in your life. And you're going to tell me about a parent or a coach or a teacher or whatever. And I'm going to say, great, give me 3 to 4 words that describe why those people are so impactful in your life. And you're going to say, well, I chose my dad because he's, consistent and he's faithful and he's hardworking and he has integrity. If in that list of those 3 people and the words that you give, I can't find words that speak to my core values, then we're probably not going to be a fit for each other. If my core value is integrity and we get on here and you're like, yeah, my hero's this guy, he's my Uncle Jerry, and that guy would rip off a nun. He can get the deal, right?
Or like Jordan Belfort.
Right. Then I'm going to identify, okay, these people and these things not going to fit here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to flesh that out at that level. That's the step that most people don't want to go to, which is like, why don't I ask him these random questions? And frankly, the part that's even rougher about it is it's the smaller the operator, the less they're willing to do the interviewing processes, which is mind-blowing to me, because if you hire somebody and you have 3 people on your team, let's use 3, and you hire another, they just became 25% of your company. So now 25% of your business is this person that you had to kind of coerce and beg to be on your team.
Some rando.
Yeah. What again, you're affecting the entirety of the entire business when you do that.
Yeah. So I like those questions. We asked those. Another one I like to ask is, Brandon, tell me about your best friend. Right.
Yep. I like that.
Because you're like, well, my best friend is this, this, and this, and this. And we know.
Correct.
You hang out with people like you.
Right. You're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's another question I always like to ask as well.
Yeah. I find just in interviewing in general, it's if you talk to high level recruiters, if you talk to, Austin, we run Sharper Talent, so they interviewing people all day long, and the thought and intent that goes into an interview versus the average person who's like, yeah, this guy coaches my kid's soccer team, he seems like a nice guy, let's bring him in here. it's just not. It's not a good fit. Now, if that guy wants to apply for the job, great. Let's go through the process. And if you're a candidate, I mean, Sharper, you know this. A lot of us are family. There's a lot of relationships going on, but all of us get hired blind. I mean, even my first proposals with Sharper did not have my name or my company logo on them. It had my PI. It had my proposal for how I was going to do the work and what I wanted to do, how I would build out the marketing department and what would take place. And then that was turned in with 2 or 3 other proposals, and it just so happened to win.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The guy that coaches my kids soccer or whatever the example was, like, that's how we all start.
Sorry.
It's like, it's not that we're looking down on it.
No.
That's how we all start.
100%.
And then it's like, well, that didn't work.
Right. But it's looking and saying, have I built a business that somebody should come work at?
Yeah.
Is it in their best interest as a person to come work for me? Have I done a good enough job creating a place where somebody could feel safe to work?
Yeah.
Because the thing you have to remember is when somebody hires onto a team, that's what they're looking for. Safety and security. They want to know that they have a safe and secure place that they can work. The growth opportunities and all those things that you think about as an entrepreneur, that's not in their mind yet. Now, they're going to get there. We're going to get them bought into the purpose and the mission and the vision, all those different things. But at the end of the day, they're thinking about, how am I buying groceries this week?
Yeah.
How am I paying my car payment this week? How am I getting these things done? And if you're not giving them the confidence on the front end, I always say it this way is, you'll keep them the way you brought them in. I was with somebody a while back, and like they had an employee starting the next day. And I said, great, what's the schedule for day one? And they're like, we don't really have a plan right now. And so we sat there for an hour and we mapped out what that person's day one was going to look like.
Yeah.
Because if they came in that day and there wasn't a plan, how much confidence do you have as an employee? Right? And then we wonder why they don't last more than 60 days.
Right.
So,
I was going to say the thing we were talking about, bringing them in. Had it. Can't remember what it was. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this stuff is, it's obvious after the fact.
yes. We find it, that's exactly what happens is we fired this guy because it didn't work out. And what's the first thing we do? We go build the roles and responsibilities. We create the measurables. We document processes and all of that. So when the next guy comes in, he's got a nice seat to sit in.
Right.
Right. And in reality, if we had just done that with this guy in the front end, we probably wouldn't have had to lose him. So
At the same time, though, we probably wouldn't have built a good seat if we didn't know what failure looks like.
potato, right? Right.
Yeah. So, what is your purpose?
We need to hire 9 salespeople in the next 5 weeks. We launched our Done For You sales service just a month ago, and the demand for it has been absolutely crazy. We have all these people reaching out to us saying our sales service has been so helpful for them. Please get us more salespeople.
If you are in high ticket sales or looking to get into that space, if you want a calendar filled up with people raising their hand saying, call me at this time, please sell me, I want to be sold to by a highly experienced salesperson, we are looking for you to have that role. We want to take people who are good and make them great. People who want to be held accountable the same way Michael Jordan would want his coach to hold him accountable, to take him to that next level.
So if you want Ian Ross or myself to train you to get better at sales, if you want to be able to control your income, decide exactly how much money you make, and you want to work at a company where you value and appreciate it, we encourage you, click the link below. However, we're only hiring superstars. If you're not A+ caliber, don't click below.
So the reason why I align so tightly with Gary, for Sharper, our purpose indicators are very clear, and Gary's shared them 1,000 times, so I don't care sharing them either, which is to give $2.6 million to faith-based causes, to the Lord's work by 2026. And the reason why Sharper exists is to do that, is to fulfill that purpose. That so closely aligns with me and who I am as a person, and what I want to accomplish with my life, that it fits me directly. I tie it to core values for me. My number one core value is together, and that I'd rather fail together than win alone. And a lot of times that seems like people always say that. People are always like, no, we'll just win together. I'm like, but if you had to choose, would you go with these people? And I find that those groups and those places where I can identify a purpose of helping and identifying issues that somebody's having, it's the reason why we do this. I live every day to wake up and go sit in companies and hear all their worst problems. and help them solve them.
Right.
And that brings a lot of joy and a lot of purpose to me. And so I've kind of aligned my purposes very, very tightly and directly to what we're accomplishing with Sharper and with Rise, with the business frameworks. Gary and I have started a not-for-profit now. We have all of these different things that we're doing together, and just purpose for me is going out there and helping a business solve problems, be able to walk out of a room at the end of the day and somebody say, I'm so much clearer on what I'm supposed to do for the next 90 days. I'm so much clearer on who the people are I'm supposed to be hiring. I'm so much clearer on what our marketing strategy is going to be for the next 90 days. Just brings me a lot of joy. It fuels me up. Like I said, I got a wife, I got a 17-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 10-month-old. And most weeks I go to the airport and get an airplane and fly all over the place, out of the country this week, here and then out of the country, all of that. And it's very much a mission and a purpose for us, not just a job.
And I would say for sure that was true for us yesterday, right? After you left, like we were clear on our purpose, clear on a direction, clear on marketing.
Yeah.
Clear on the people we need.
Yeah.
So for sure that was the case.
Awesome.
Question for you, going back to your purpose.
Sure.
You would rather be on the lose together than win alone.
Yeah.
I would not.
Okay.
Would I not be a good fit for your company?
You would fit fine with Sharper. Again, so here's the way we're set up is we have an ecosystem model. You would not work in my department.
Yeah.
We've tried it. We've tried to take high A, low B people and put them in the marketing department. And, if you repeatedly, I'll be careful here. If you repeatedly show up for work late on me, if you repeatedly don't follow the plan, if you repeatedly will not listen and work together with me, then it's going to violate a core value for me.
See, I could do all those things.
Sure, but the motive behind it would matter to me.
Yeah.
I would want to know that you're a team player.
Yeah.
This is what it works for me because Gary is a venturer, but he's a high B venturer. And so because of that, it's people over task.
Right.
And I find my peace and I find my solace around people who are more about the people than about the task that's being
Well, and that's
done.
what's interesting because like my C is now middle, right? But the first time I took it, it was almost 1 sigma.
Got it.
Positive, right? So my A was over my C, but not by much.
Okay.
So I was 1.5 A, negative 1.5 B, 0.75 C, negative 0.75 D. So the things I always said is like, I want us to win.
Right.
Like that's what I've always kind of described it, right? It's not like we're gonna win,
Right.
or like I will do everything in my power for us to win.
Yeah.
But that win
first.
win first.
That's right.
Yeah,
I'm the opposite.
yeah,
I look at it and say, I would rather get there with the people that I'm with than to get there and be standing there all alone.
right. And that's the collaborator part.
Yeah. It's a
Right.
collaborator part. I feel like it's driven into me. Things from growing up. I have a brother who passed away at 2, had nearly drowned at 2 and passed away at 14. And so that created within me, I believe, some things that tie me back to the people that I'm with, and the people in my life are so critical to me that I'm. It's a very deep core values violation for me if somebody is not going to be a together person.
Yeah.
So,
But we're talking about core values, right? So this is the ultimate test.
right.
Like this doesn't align. Like it doesn't matter how much I like you.
That's right. I do these every single week with people as I go through their core values and say, if somebody is not in line with this, are you willing to fire them today?
Yeah.
Right. And for me, I had to come to that place when I started this journey with systems and processes and all the things that we do now with Sharper. I had to come to that place, and I had to look at people who were in my marketing agency, and I would say, you're not a team player. This is not a together thing for you. You don't want to walk in communion with me, like in life together. You don't want to join up with me. This isn't going to work, and you got to go. And those are tough conversations. But I mean, I've had people who were, and again, it's the blessing and the curse. I've had underperformers who were willing to be team players.
Yeah.
And I've suffered through them longer than I probably should have.
I have,
but
as
it's
well.
core.
Right, I have as well. That's that. I think that high C.
Yeah.
So, other question here, and this might be too personal. You don't have to answer it. Your wife's a maverick.
Yeah. My wife is the venturer, but high A.
High A venture.
Very high A.
So how does that work with core values?
Great question. And so 2 different things. There's drive and then core values. She knows, and I know, and we both know that high A, that dominance, she can get her way whenever she wants to.
Mm-hmm.
She can push it to a level that I would never push it to, because I'm going to be more collaborative. I'm always going to go on that side. And that's where that purpose and that trust alignment becomes so critical.
Yeah.
That there is a mutual love, there's a mutual care for one another that looks and says, you know what my core values are.
Mm-hmm.
You know where we're going as a family and how we're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, there are going to be times I'm going to respect you, that you know what you're doing. And you're going to be times where you're going to respect me and I know what I'm doing. And just understand that it's always coming from the right place.
Right.
I find that's often the case is when not to go too deep into marriage counseling here, but I find it often within couples, that's usually where the problem comes is they feel like the intent is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And if the intent is bad, then there's nothing you're going to do right. And if the intent is bad, then everything you're going to do is wrong.
Yeah. What was it? It's not disgust, but there's something like there's a book. I can't remember who wrote it not too long ago, because I've been on this deep dive about how to be a better husband. It's like the worst way to start a conversation is just right off the bat with accusations.
Yeah. Right.
Right. It's like, like when you start off, coming off a curious perspective. Hey, Brandon, you did this.
Right.
What happened here? Or like, Brandon, why did you do this?
Right. I can't think of the guy's name. I'll get it later. But he says it this way, which is, as soon as I ask a why question, it demands that you justify. Where if I ask a what question, it requires that you discover.
Yeah.
And so it's being careful with the nuance side of things. They're being careful with those types of things, from more of a macro perspective. It's just looking at each other and understanding, like, you both bring strengths to the table. I'm a very high C person, and she's a very low C person.
Yeah.
I mean, she could get stuff done tomorrow. I'm going to wait and 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 wait. And we both understand and respect the fact that if I'm asking us to wait, I understand you want to go now.
Yeah.
I understand that and I respect that, but I'm making a decision for our family. Just the same as if it was a speed question, I'd be coming to you and saying, how quickly would we move on this?
Yeah.
That being said, if my wife was a collaborator like I was, this would not work.
Yeah.
Like, the idea that right now, I mean, like, my daughter's 17 and like she's going to open up a boutique, and my wife already found her a spot. Like, it's done. Like, it's happening. She'll be a 17-year-old with like her own boutique. It's going to be wild.
Awesome.
That doesn't happen if your mom is not like a monster entrepreneur. I mean, my wife built a very large business on her own back, running 3 heat presses all by herself.
Yeah.
Right? Just grabs a bull by the horns, can work 20 hours in a row straight.
Will you?
She's again, that's the thing is, you back to, we talked about it earlier, you're not going to get up earlier than her, and you're not going to stay up later than her. You're not going to work harder than her.
Yeah.
And so having that as a team, the word gets overused all the time, but synergy, right? The two of us together is a synergy that, I mean, again, I'd put us against anybody, and that's more on her than me, just because she's an incredible person. And that's I'm very, very blessed to have that, because especially raising daughters, I mean, I always grew up with all boys, right?
Yeah.
So raising daughters and having an example of a lady like that who can do those kind of things and can just be awesome. I mean, just my daughters have the best. So
Yeah.
I'm just there for the ride.
You talking about why and what? Chris Voss does a really good job explaining that inside.
Oh, yeah.
Never Split the Difference. Something I do with my kids, because when I was growing up, if I was crying, there wasn't a lot of times. Our emotions got beat out of us. If you were crying, I was like, why are you crying?
Right.
Right. And then, I learned with my kids, how come you're crying?
Yeah.
Allows them to feel their emotions.
That's good.
Another example I've used is like, you come home, your wife's like, I feel so overwhelmed. It's like, well, why are you overwhelmed?
Right.
It's going to be bad.
Wrong question.
Right.
That's
it's like, what happened today that caused you to feel overwhelmed? Now we're having a conversation.
Yep. It opens doors.
Yeah.
I mean, the one that helped me so much was, have you ever read Crucial Conversations?
Yeah.
Talks about this a lot, which is just asking the right questions on the front end, just to reset the brain. I mean, I find myself all the time where it's like in a marriage, you get in an argument, you have a disagreement with each other, and you'll be 10 minutes into it and be like, man, I sound like an idiot. Like, I sound so stupid right now. And there's science behind it that says you get dumber the madder you get. Just those resetting, clarifying questions. It's what I do all day. It's what I did to you guys all day yesterday. It's just one question after another, after another. I mean, not to make it a biblical thing, but go through the Bible and see how many questions get asked. I mean, the whole Gospels are basically Jesus just asking people questions,
Yeah.
letting them hang themselves.
Yeah. So what is your biggest struggle today?
Biggest struggle today is, and I think it's a good struggle, is imbalance. You know, my wife has helped me with this one, is that we should just embrace imbalance. That life is not going to ever be a perfect balance of everything. If you want that, then you probably should go get a 9 to 5 and just, you know, do your thing.
Yeah.
And to embrace that imbalance. Don't try to fight against it, but understand that there's seasonality of life. There are times where you have to be incredibly busy, and there are times where you can completely check out.
Yeah.
And so I always live with a little bit of that, like, imbalance that I feel there. And so that's probably the biggest struggle, is trying to bring back that balance a little bit. But my wife always tells me, don't fight it. Just lean into it, you know?
Yeah.
If it's time to work, it's time to work. If it's time to play, it's time to play.
I think it's something Gary Keller pushes, right? In the one thing.
Yeah.
It was balance is a myth.
Yeah.
What is your superpower?
I think I can do a good job synthesizing what a customer is going through and figuring out what they need to hear in that moment. I think I do a good job with that. That's probably where I would sit. I feel like I could do a good job delivering tough messaging without it feeling like it's hurting. I get that a lot when we go places. Is Gary was here and he just beat us to death, you know. And your team said it yesterday. We got done. They were like, "Well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be." But I also felt like we sliced some things open, right? I feel like I can be surgical when I need to be surgical. You know, there's positives and negatives. Some that doesn't resonate with everybody. Some people want you to come in with the bull in the china shop, and I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to come in there and slice them open, figure out where it's at. We're going to remove the tumor, and then we'll heal up from there.
Yeah, I remember the very first time I had Gary come in, because I think it was the end of 2020 when Gary came out.
Yeah,
and that was some of the most intense, right? Because like, I've been doing this for a long time, right? I've started at 07, right? I've paid for a lot of coaching over the years.
Yeah.
And I've read, like, you're not supposed to read like a book a week or whatever, but like I've read a lot of books. Yeah. And I implemented, executed a lot of different things. And it was incredibly humbling.
Right.
Because like, and I said this to Gary, right? Is that you didn't say anything I didn't already know knowledge-wise.
Right.
But you pointed out all the blind spots, and man, it hurt like hell. Because like it was like he pushed every pain point inside the company.
Yeah, he's good at that.
Yeah,
he's good at finding those spots. It is a humbling thing, and also understanding at the same time is like that's anybody getting an outside perspective to be able to find those weak spots is going to find those. And secondly, I always remind folks of this, which is, when you think of intelligence, we always think that means somebody's smart. All intelligence is pattern recognition.
Yeah.
So 113 times last year, I walked into businesses and saw where all their problems were, where the pains were, where the issues are. So when it comes to walking into a business like that, it's not that I'm any smarter than you. I do have a pattern recognition. And Gary, at this point of 7 years of this, especially when it comes to a real estate company, there's a pattern recognition of, I can almost walk in and say, this person will be gone in 3 months. And this process is going to kill you if you don't fix it tomorrow. Yeah. Not because I'm any smarter than you, but because I've seen it literally 100 times this year, and it's almost always exactly the same.
Yeah, there's two things he said. That A, you need to pay more attention to Summer, right? She requires more of your attention. Yeah. Right? And we had a blowout.
Summer, your employee, not this season.
Yeah. Right? And you met her yesterday, right? And he's like, yeah, if you don't pay more attention to her, she's going to blow up. And she blew up. Yeah. Right? And then B is like, your partner here, like, you need to take extra precautions, or this is not going to end. Or this is going to end, and perhaps not well. Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah. I walked into a team once and we got done, and the owner pulled me in his office afterwards, and he goes, "What do you think about so-and-so?" He's like, "He's a great sales guy, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "I think he'll be gone in 3 months." No, we're really close. He's going to be here a long time with me. He's going to be here forever. So that's fine. What do you think? He called me about a month later. He says, "Hey, guess what? So-and-so left." And I'm like, there's just markers. Yeah. There's things you look at and you say, look, if you start seeing unhealthy conflict in a business, or you start, again, it's like a pitcher who picks up on or a batter who picks up on like a tick of a pitcher, right? He's tipping his pitch. it's the same thing. Like I can almost see it where it's like this process is tipping its pitch that it's not going to work. Or somebody is just the way they answer the get it, want it, have the capacity to do it questions. Like there's just things that come up that if you put me in another environment, I'm not going to have that that clarity. But
you got the reps.
Yeah, I got the reps at this point. So
yeah. What book have you gifted more than any other?
Oh, great question. Hero on a Mission, again, by Donald Miller from StoryBranding. It's the most incredible journey you'll ever go on from a book perspective. It's the most practical book you'll ever read. I always warn people ahead of time when they read it, be patient with it. The first 3 or 4 chapters is him kind of unpacking a little bit of his own journey, his own story. And then about chapter 5, it picks up the pace. And all of a sudden it turns into, just to give you the highlights of it, he has you write your eulogy. And then he has you work your life backwards off your eulogy. And so you literally create a daily action plan off of what you want them to read at your funeral someday.
Yeah, that is very practical.
Super, super impactful. I'm a big fan. I've probably given out 100 of them at this point.
Gotcha. Quick side note, we're talking about Donald Miller. So I mentioned earlier StoryBrand, right?
Yeah.
So my daughters, they're very ambitious, probably a function of mom and dad, right?
Of course.
One's a strategist, one's an individualist.
Okay.
Her A is higher than mine.
Okay.
Right. So
that's fun.
So I had her read StoryBrand, and she wants to get the annual subscription for Duolingo.
Okay.
Right. Because you get the monthly subscriptions, like $12 a month, something like that. And the annual is like $130. So it's cheaper if you go with a year.
Sure, of course.
But if you go with the annual, it's a family plan, and you can have 5 people on it.
Nice.
Right. And so she's trying to pitch mom.
Great.
Right, like,
correct.
Mom, here's why we need.
She needs to go to some classes.
Yeah.
Closemoresales.com.
Closemoresales.com. Well, but she's pitching, and as she's listening, and she's doing it, she's like, here's why. She's talking about the financial benefit and this and that, and the outcome, right? So she's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And I was like, Amelia, I gotta stop you right there. Like, you're better than 90% of salespeople out there, right? Like that was really good.
I love it.
Here's a couple of things
Yes.
I would like to add to this, right? And I was like, instead of talking to mom about how, you're saving money and the whole family's going to benefit, getting better at language and this and that, talk about hey, can you imagine we're in Europe, we're going to France where you want to go.
Yeah.
And you're able to just talk to the shop owner in French. Like how awesome is that? How's that going to feel?
Yes.
Right. We're taking this to the next level.
Yeah.
Right. And as I'm done, she's already tuned me out.
Yeah.
Completely tuned me out.
Yeah.
And she looks at me, is like, are you arguing with Donald Miller? What do you mean? It's like, well, in StoryBrand, he says you sell this way. I was like, okay, well, just look. He's great at stories.
That's right.
I feel like I'm more qualified on the sales side.
That's funny.
But she crushed it on
That's so good.
because she was pitching benefits.
Yeah.
She wasn't selling features. She was pitching benefits. Like, let's just take this one step further.
Absolutely. I would, again, we that's why we make those distinctions. The marketing is the what, the sale is now it's time to ask, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the nuance comes in that you fill the void for, which is the ability to ask beyond just more marketing messaging.
Right.
Which is that's where that distinction takes place for me. That's the disconnect always takes place is people always get either marketing and advertising confused or they get marketing and sales confused. They forget that it's not just where you say it, it's what you say. It's not just that you had a postcard got mailed out, what was on the postcard, right? And then what was the call to action on the postcard? I mean, Donald Miller will tell you, you go through your website and nobody has enough calls to action.
Yeah.
Which is what you're doing in a sales process is you're reframing to create a new call to action, which is now you're in France. What would you want to happen, right?
Right.
It's a little bit of a different framing. I like that though.
But
My daughter's the same, but I take it from a different perspective. She has to make me a PowerPoint. And so every time she wants something, she wanted goldfish. She wanted fish a while back. She wanted beta fish. So she had to make me a PowerPoint on, the benefits of her beta fish. And so I sit on the couch and my wife and my daughters, we all sit there and we put it up on the TV and she walks us through her pitch and she got some beta fish out of it. So
that's awesome.
it was a good deck.
We had both my daughters had something they had to do presentations on for school.
Yeah.
Right. So they were presenting something. I was like, well, if this is a skill that you need for school right now,
100%.
and then they asked me something. I was like, well, you're gonna have to make a presentation.
Right. Let's go.
And they had to create a new presentation from Google Slides.
Yep.
And it was really cool to see.
Very cool. And it's nice to start seeing those things that are practical skills making their way into the school. I mean,
Right.
my daughter came home and she had to build a Google website. And I'm, and my wife's like, well, it's cheating a little bit because, obviously you could just sit down with your dad and he's going to StoryBrand out your landing page for your website for you. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. It's all you. I'll be happy to look it over with you when you're done. But it is cool to start seeing a lot of those things that are much more practical, making their way into the education system for sure.
Yeah. They'll ask me for help and I refuse.
Yeah.
So basically what I say is you have to do all the work.
Yeah.
And then before you turn it in, you feel like this is something I can turn in.
Yeah.
At this point, I'll look at it.
Yeah.
But
It's hard for me though, because how they score it and how they score it at the school versus what I know is actually going to work in the real world is also different. So there was something the other day where it was one of those where I was like, it just pained me, but I'm like, if that's what the teacher told you to do, I guess you got to do it.
Yeah, you got a rubric.
Yeah.
Well, we got to pass the rubric.
That's right.
But this is not. This is not how the real world works.
That's right. Yeah. That's when I teach at Illinois State. That's what the teacher always tells me every time. She's like, yeah, I like it when you come here because she's like, I don't run marketing campaigns. I teach marketing.
Yeah.
She's like, so actually getting down to the practicals of it now is like a different perspective for the kids at the college, which is kind of sad when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, when they need it, they'll reach out to you.
That's right.
They'll reach out to Sharper.
I get a
They'll
ton of
check out the
LinkedIn
podcast.
messages from kids who heard me speak at Illinois State and saying, "Hey, can you refer me some references?" So,
Yeah.
give
So
me
they
some
don't need to
ideas.
learn it in school. They
That's
just need to have their eyes open to.
That's right.
All right. So I want you to think about the last thoughts that you want to leave everyone with. Guys, if you found this to be valuable, please subscribe. Please share this with your colleagues, right? Like we're on a mission to create millionaires. That's our key purpose indicator,
There you go.
right? So we're going to do better now after our consult with Brandon yesterday. So share so we can create more millionaires. What are some last thoughts you want to leave all the listeners?
Somebody gave me this thought a while back, and I thought it was a really intentional way of thinking about life just in general, which is if you ran your business like you ran your home, how would it go? And if you ran your home like you ran your business, how would it go? And immediately when we start thinking about things through the lens of outcomes, all of a sudden it changes activities. And so I'm on this pursuit. You asked me earlier, like biggest challenges, and I guess I probably should have gone there, which is a little bit more along the lines of being much more intentional about where life is. A friend of mine's a performance coach, and you've heard the phrase all the time, but he just preaches this concept of being where your feet are at. And I think that's a very, very important thing for all of us to think about. Whether it's in your business and you're going to be in business, you might as well run it right anyway. You might as well have the right systems, the right processes, the right way of doing things. And same thing in the rest of your life. You might as well. You're going to 24 hours in the day anyway. They might as well be a good 24 hours. And to create those efficiencies that are going to make you the best version of yourself possible for the people in your life, for the purpose for which you're here, for why God created you to be here. You might as well do it right if you're going to do it. And I think that's a good challenge for all of us.
So the greatest challenge, and what's the hardest part to implement? Because 3 questions or whatever for a frantic family.
Yeah.
Right. Brought that home. My wife's like, "We're not in business." Okay. But like, it's not life or death, but it certainly feels like life or death in business if we do it wrong. Like we have Paul Sparks of the Whale Club, right? Like one of the funniest things, like he sent out like 30,000 mailers with the wrong phone number. Right. That's like, it feels like life or death.
It does.
Right. Like I screwed up this one thing and there's massive consequences for it.
Absolutely.
Family is kind of like food. Like you screw up for some time and you don't notice until it's too late.
Yeah. It's a concept that I've heard many different places. I'll give Gary attributed because I think that's probably the first place I heard it, is the difference between glass balls and rubber balls. The average millennial will go through 12 micro careers in their life. They'll have one job. They'll go into another career. My father stayed at one job for 35 years, right? There is always more opportunities out there. And there are some things that are glass balls and there are some things that are rubber balls. Some will bounce back, some will not. Family is one of those things that is a glass ball.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have to think of it through the lens of how am I going to properly take care of this thing while also fulfilling purpose and doing the things that I'm supposed to do. And so I think it's definitely being much more intentional about our decisions there, understanding business is important, it's valuable, it's vital, but I sit so often with people, whether it's husbands and wives or brothers and sisters or family working together. And at the end of the day, I sometimes have to look at them and say, look, at the end of the day, this business could go under. We could all figure it out. You guys are going to be fine. You know, we can go get other jobs, do other things. That's fine. But this, we can't do anything about this. We got to take care of this thing. So
Absolutely.
being intentional.
Yep. And something that we've done more of is looking at where we want to be, right? Like, you know, sounds corny, right? Like, what does success look like? Like, you know, like how do we want this to look down the road? And then
working your way backwards off of it. We do these business simulators with large teams. I've done it, I don't know, 5 or 6 times now, where we create all the different, same thing we did yesterday, process ownership charts. We give them about 15 different tools that you need to make within about a 2-hour time period. And one of those things is the 90-day, 1-year, 5-year plan, a 3-year, 5-year plan. You got to give that to me by the end of 2 hours. And so we put everybody in different seats than they're usually in the business. Salespeople are over here in operations. Operations people are over in sales. Finance people are now our visionaries of our company. And we did it in a big hotel. And so literally they're running around this hotel trying to build the pieces for this business. And I've done it, again, probably 5 times. Nobody's ever actually done it right. Because what happens is you have finance people or people who are more in operations, and they usually start at 90 days and they try to work their way up to 5 years. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You have to start at 5 years and work your way back. And I find that same thing, life, business, all the way across, is we have to look down the road and say, where are we going with this? Because visionaries have to know where we're going. If we don't know where we're going, then there's no hope and there's no reason to go down the line to it. And that's where I think the planning side of this, thinking about life more as a plan, that is going to get changed. I mean, stuff gets thrown at you all the time, and the path gets detoured and gets rerouted, but that hope is that thing that keeps us going.
Yeah. Awesome. Someone wants to reach out to you. What's the best way?
Yeah, so sharperbusiness.com is the best way to get a hold of us. We have all sorts of stuff on there. There's all sorts of free resources, all sorts of stuff. We do free webinars like every other month. There's events. There's all sorts of stuff. So sharperbusiness.com is the best way for that. I'm at Brand McCurdy on Instagram. So if you want to hit me up there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
Steve Trang. Jump on the Steve Trang. We real estate disruptors.